It was 6 a.m. when the first cow crashed through the bushes into Karen's rose garden and began mooing at full throttle, ramming its head gently against her birdbath, like it was trying to summon breakfast from the stone. She ran out in silk pajamas and screamed so loudly the dog dropped its squeaky toy in shock. Just a day earlier, she had smugly told me fences don't apply to her. Today, her azaleas were buried under a confused and slightly constipated Jersey cow named Dolly. This wasn't an accident. It was the natural consequence of cutting my fence to turn my land into her personal dog park. If she wanted to trespass like it was a free-for-all pasture, then welcome to ranch life, Karen. The trouble had started innocently enough. I'm a quiet man. My name is Luke, and I keep mostly to myself. I've lived on this farmstead since I was a teenager, after my grandfather left it to me in his will. He raised cows, chickens, and the occasional orphan goat. I modernized things a bit, added some solar panels, upgraded the fencing, and set up a rotating pasture system. My land borders one side of a suburban development run by a notoriously overbearing HOA. I don't pay dues, I'm not under their jurisdiction, and I don't care what color they think my barn should be. We were fine with each other. Until Karen moved in. Karen was the kind of neighbor who wore sunglasses in the rain and walked her dogs like she was strolling through an art gallery, not someone else's neighborhood. She had 2 overpriced fluff balls that barked at anything with a pulse and names like Duchess and Sir Fluffington. For a while, I'd see her walking along the edge of the pasture, eyeing the land like it owed her something. Then one morning, I saw her actually inside my fence, walking her dogs right through the cattle pasture. It was so casual I almost thought she had permission from someone else. Except I own this land, and nobody gives permission but me. I confronted her, gently at first. I told her this was active livestock space, not a dog trail, and asked her not to come through again. She smiled, the kind of smile people give waiters they're about to yell at, and said it was just a walk, no big deal, and her dogs needed space to roam. I reiterated, very clearly, that she was not allowed to cross my fence line. She waved me off like I was an extra in her sitcom, and kept walking. When I walked the perimeter later that day, I saw the damage. One section of my back fence, about 4 feet wide, had been cleanly snipped. Not chewed by animals. Not damaged by time. Cut. As in bolt cutters. My security camera confirmed it the next morning. The footage wasn't subtle. Karen, in her obnoxious neon tracksuit, marched right up to the fence, clipped it, and marched through like she was Caesar claiming Gaul. The dogs were unleashed, darting into the field, chasing my cows. The cows panicked, especially a pregnant heifer named Buttercup, who almost slipped in the mud trying to flee from Sir Fluffington. I'm a patient man. I've dealt with escaped pigs, broken irrigation lines, and once, a rogue turkey that declared war on my mailbox. But this was war. I called her out again, showed her the video, told her I'd be filing a report. Her reaction? She laughed, told me fences can't stop nature, and that dogs are spiritual companions and free spirits. Then she accused me of cluttering the view with agricultural junk, as she gestured to my feed troughs and watering tanks. She ended by telling me the fence was ugly, and I should be thanking her for trimming it. I was speechless. And then I got a letter. It was from the HOA, citing me for building unauthorized fencing on community property. They said a complaint had been filed claiming I was encroaching on shared green space. Except there was no green space. My land is outside their jurisdiction. I don't belong to their HOA, never have. Karen had gone so far as to claim my family's property was partially theirs due to view access, and the HOA had blindly backed her because she was on the board. That's when I realized I was up against someone who didn't care about logic, law, or livestock. She only cared about control. The final straw came the following weekend. I had just returned from the feed store when I saw 2 families I didn't recognize walking through the pasture. The kids were trying to pet the cows. One of the dogs had left a trail of destruction through a patch of young wildflowers I'd planted to attract pollinators. And there, right in the middle, was Karen, hosting what appeared to be a self-declared dog social. I called out, furious. She shouted back that I should consider myself lucky. Free exposure, she said. I told her the sheriff would be getting this footage next. She rolled her eyes and said, "You're being dramatic. No one cares about cows." The next day, I drove straight to the county records office. I dusted off every legal document I could find on this land's history, and that's when I hit gold. A long-forgotten agricultural easement from 1957 ran directly through what is now Karen's backyard. It hadn't been used in years, but it was still valid. Technically, if I filed the right paperwork, I could reactivate it and designate it as a livestock path. It would mean rerouting my cows through that exact patch of property Karen had built her decorative fire pit on. She thought she was playing chess, but I owned the whole board. I filed the documents the same week. County officers visited, verified everything, and gave me the green light. The permit was approved. I ordered new fencing, marked the route, and cleared the brush leading up to Karen's back property line. Then I made a wooden signpost and burned the letters in myself. Official Cow Path by County Permit. Under it, in smaller letters, "Please don't feed the cows or fight the law." As I hammered it in, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: peace. Sweet, sweet peace with a side of poetic justice. And when the cows made their first walk through the path, right into Karen's manicured lawn, it wasn't just satisfying. It was necessary. The same woman who mocked my livelihood and violated my rights now had front-row seats to the reality of country life. And this was just the beginning. Because if she wanted to act like she was part of the farm, I was ready to give her the full ranch experience. One hoofprint at a time. The county permit came back faster than I expected, and the woman at the records desk actually chuckled as she handed it over. She said something like, "We don't get many of these old easement claims anymore, but yours checks out. Let the cows roam." I left the office with that paper in my hand like it was a golden ticket. In a way it was. Karen had treated my land like her own playground, so now it was time for her to experience the full reality of a working farm. And it started with a simple wooden gate and a herd of very curious cows. Back at home, I set to work immediately. I walked the easement path with a measuring wheel, laid down survey flags, and even double-checked the coordinates with a friend from the county office just in case Karen decided to challenge it. The path cut clean through the southeast corner of her yard. She'd landscaped it like it was a royal garden: marble pavers, topiary animals, a ridiculous fire pit shaped like a lotus flower. It was all about to get some new, natural fertilizer, courtesy of Dolly, Buttercup, and friends. But I didn't just want to retaliate. I wanted to make it official, permanent, and absolutely undeniable. So I built a rustic wooden frame, hung a steel gate with hinges that squeaked just enough to be theatrical, and painted a sign to match the official permit. Authorized cow path, you do not obstruct. Below that, I nailed a laminated copy of the easement and a short paragraph explaining how it had been reactivated. Everything was perfectly legal, well documented, and carefully positioned so no one could say they didn't know. Then I waited. And oh, did she come! Karen appeared at her back window just as I opened the gate for the first time. Her face was squished against the glass like a horrified toddler at a zoo. I pretended not to see her and whistled as my cows began strolling along the new path. They were confused at first. Dolly took a detour into a bush, but once I tossed a few hay flakes along the route, they followed the trail like parade float. Within minutes, a half-ton of mooing beef was tramping through her precious corner lot. Karen came storming outside, shrieking like someone had thrown a raccoon in her bathtub. She wasn't even wearing shoes, just socks, and by the time she crossed her lawn to reach me, those socks were coated in mud, manure, and what might have been Daisy's partially digested breakfast. She demanded I stop, accused me of harassment, and threatened to call the police. I didn't even flinch. I handed her a copy of the easement, smiled, and pointed to the sign. She stared at it like it was written in another language, then tore the paper in half. Bad move. I had already emailed the permit to her HOA, the sheriff's office, and even the neighborhood Facebook group. Her tantrum was being recorded by one of my outdoor security cameras. I reminded her calmly that this was an active livestock corridor, legally restored, and if she obstructed it in any way, she'd be violating county regulations. She stomped back to her house, barking orders at her dogs, who were now cowering behind a hedge. What I didn't expect was what happened next. The cows didn't just use the path once, they loved it. Something about the route must have felt like an adventure to them. Every morning, as if on cue, they lined up near the new gate, waiting for it to open. They walked the path, grazed along the way, and made sure to pause extra long right at the edge of Karen's fire pit. Buttercup even tried to climb into one of her decorative planters. I didn't stop her. Nature, after all, should be allowed to roam free, Karen said it herself. And then came the neighbors. Word spread fast. First, it was just a couple of kids from across the street who leaned over the fence to watch the cows. Then a retired gentleman with a folding chair and a cup of coffee started showing up around 7 a.m. By the end of the week, there were half a dozen people lined up daily to watch the cow parade. Someone even brought snacks. It became a ritual. People waved at the cows. Someone started an Instagram account called Moonlight March. Karen's face appeared in a few early photos, always mid-yell, pointing furiously while wearing some sort of bedazzled bathrobe. Meanwhile, I made sure everything remained perfectly compliant. I posted signs, scheduled maintenance, and even got a fresh inspection from the county livestock office. Clean bill of health. No violations. Every time Karen tried to escalate the situation, the law had my back. It drove her mad. She filed an appeal with the HOA, accusing me of devaluing her property. I responded by mailing the HOA board individual cow-shaped thank you cookies, each with a smiley face. One of the board members posted a picture of theirs online with the caption, "Best dispute resolution ever." Karen wasn't just losing the battle, she was losing the narrative. Where once her word carried weight with the HOA, now people rolled their eyes when she spoke. Her obsession with control was unraveling in public. She began patrolling her backyard in giant sunglasses and noise-canceling headphones, as if that would make the cows disappear. It didn't. Daisy got a little too curious one morning and licked the lens of her security camera. Karen screamed so loud it triggered my neighbor's ring alarm. Then came the ultimate blow to her pride. During a monthly HOA meeting, someone suggested turning the cow path into a community, rural appreciation zone. Karen objected furiously, but too many people liked the idea. They liked me. They liked the cows. And they really liked that someone had finally stood up to her. She left the meeting early, her cheeks blotchy and jaw clenched. I heard later that she tried to call a special vote to remove me from the area entirely, only to be reminded, again, that I don't live under HOA jurisdiction. From where I stood, everything was going according to plan. Karen had tried to treat me like I was beneath her, some country bumpkin who didn't understand the rules of civilized neighborhoods. But I did understand the rules. I just also understood the law. And now she had a herd of reminders walking past her lawn every single day, hooves clopping, tails swishing, doing their business like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because it was. But I knew Karen wouldn't quit. She wasn't the kind of person to lose gracefully. No, she was the type to triple down, to make wild accusations, to try to reclaim power through chaos. So I prepared for whatever came next. I backed up all the footage, doubled the security cameras, and warned the neighbors to keep their eyes open. Because if I'd learned anything from her by now, it was this. Karen might not respect fences, but she absolutely hated boundaries. And I'd just drawn a very thick one across her lawn. By the start of the third week, it was no longer just my cows walking a path. It was a local event. The cow route had become a spectacle, and Karen's once perfect backyard was now the unwilling stage for an unscripted drama that played out daily. What began as a private dispute had blossomed into an HOA-wide fascination. I didn't do anything to encourage it, at least not openly. But I couldn't help it if people found the situation amusing. Or if they decided to document it. Or if someone launched a Facebook group called Moo Watchers Anonymous, complete with daily posts and a leaderboard tracking which cow left the biggest mess in Karen's yard. What surprised me most was the neighborhood's reaction. I expected some complaints, maybe even some backlash. Instead, I received pie. Literal pie. One neighbor dropped off a cherry pie with a handwritten note, "Thank you for giving us the only reason we look forward to Mondays." Another slipped me a gift card to a barbecue place with a wink and a whisper about how she hadn't laughed this hard in years. There was a certain poetic justice to it all. Karen had spent months terrorizing the neighborhood with her HOA rules, weaponizing citations over mailbox heights and porch light. Now, thanks to her own arrogance, she couldn't even enjoy her backyard without stepping in a cow patty. The tipping point came on a Saturday morning. It was sunny, birds were chirping, and the cows were in especially cheerful moods. Buttercup had just discovered that Karen's newly installed stepping stones made a wonderful scratching post for her hindquarters. As she wiggled against them with contentment, a crowd of onlookers burst into laughter. Karen emerged from her back door looking like a tornado in human form, sunglasses crooked, bathrobe clutched tight, foam slippers flopping. She shouted at the cows, at the people, even at the wind, demanding that this madness stop immediately. Then she tripped over her own decorative lantern and landed flat in a flower bed while her tiny dogs barked like they were auditioning for a cartoon. Someone caught the whole thing on camera. By the end of the day, it had gone viral on TikTok, then Reddit, then YouTube. The title was simple: Karen vs. the Cow Parade. Within 48 hours, it had over 2 million views. Comments flooded in from across the world, people quoting her lines, laughing at her expressions, and rooting for the cows. My mailbox overflowed with fan mail. I started receiving interview requests from local reporters. One podcast even asked if I'd consider doing a segment called Ranch Justice. I politely declined. I didn't need a microphone. The cows were doing all the talking for me. Naturally, this did not sit well with Karen. If she had any shred of dignity left, it was dissolving faster than her grass. She responded the only way she knew how, by trying to regain control. First, she attempted to run for HOA president again in an emergency vote, claiming the current leadership was failing to preserve neighborhood harmony. She cited the cow path as an existential threat to property value. But this time, the neighborhood wasn't buying it. At the meeting, people laughed her off the stage. One elderly man stood up and said, "Karen, you brought this on yourself. We warned you about messing with country folk." Another resident offered to start selling cow-themed yard signs with slogans like, "Let them moo," and "Make pastures great again." Karen stormed out before the vote even started. She didn't win. She didn't even place. The only people who voted for her were her cousin and someone who accidentally checked the wrong box. That night, she unleashed a tirade on the neighborhood message board, accusing me of running a deliberate harassment campaign using livestock as weapons. She threatened lawsuits, restraining orders, and even said she was contacting the governor. One neighbor posted a meme in response. Karen's face photoshopped onto the Statue of Liberty, holding a cow instead of a torch. The caption read, "Give me liberty, or give me steak." The post got more likes than any HOA announcement in history. Karen deleted her message within the hour. But the damage was done. She'd become the punchline in a joke she wrote herself. It wasn't just the HOA that turned against her. Even her allies began distancing themselves. Marla, her longtime gossip partner and fellow board member, suddenly stopped speaking to her. One of her friends quietly sold their home and moved out. Karen tried to paint herself as a victim, but everyone remembered the years she fined residents for minor violations, berated children for riding bikes too fast, and once tried to shut down a lemonade stand because it didn't have a permit. This wasn't karma. It was consequences. Meanwhile, I kept things steady. I adjusted the path slightly to improve drainage, laid some straw where the ground was getting too muddy, and even installed a split rail guide to help the cows stay on track. I wasn't rubbing it in. I was just managing the land. I still did my chores, rotated the herds, maintained the fencing. The cows had adapted wonderfully. They looked healthier, more relaxed, and even seemed to enjoy the attention. I sometimes joked with friends that they were going to unionize and demand TV royalties. Karen, for her part, tried to wall off the path using decorative hedges. I warned her that would violate the permit terms. She argued the hedges were natural art. I countered with the county's official wording. Any obstruction, natural or artificial, shall be subject to removal by the easement holder. She called me a wannabe cowboy with a grudge. I smiled and tipped my hat. The next day, I trimmed the hedge myself, per the law, and left a note in her mailbox with a copy of the ordinance. I included a free cow sticker. She didn't acknowledge it. A week later, her backyard camera footage was mysteriously leaked online, clips showing her hurling water balloons over the fence at the cows, shaking a rake at them like a pitchfork-wielding cartoon villain, and once even yelling at a confused squirrel she mistook for a hidden camera. The internet responded as expected, with memes, remixes, and one surprisingly catchy EDM track titled Karen's Courage. She became a trending hashtag for all the wrong reasons. At this point, any reasonable person might have admitted defeat. Not Karen. She doubled down. She tried to host a Karen's Peace rally in her front yard to reclaim the narrative. Nobody came except a bored pizza delivery guy who took a selfie with her protest sign and posted it with the caption, "I was here for this disaster." She stood there alone for 20 minutes holding a banner that said, "Restore order to our neighborhood." Ironically, the cows chose that exact moment to do their daily march past her backyard, mooing like clockwork. The internet ate it up. The HOA, now fully over her antics, decided to formally censure her. They issued her a warning for disruptive behavior, multiple complaints of public disturbances, and violating social decorum standards. Her appeal was denied. She was removed from all official duties indefinitely. Someone replaced her nameplate on the HOA bulletin board with a photo of Dolly the cow and a handwritten quote, "Sometimes you mess with the bull and get the moo." Karen wasn't the type to let a public shaming settle quietly. Most people, after being turned into a national meme, might take a break from causing trouble. But not her. If anything, the viral chaos only stoked her fire. And so, after losing her HOA seat, her backyard privacy, and whatever shred of local credibility she had left, she decided to take a darker route. She'd tried drama, she'd tried legal threats, she'd tried yelling at livestock, and none of it worked. So now she moved into sabotage. She didn't announce it, didn't send one of her long passive-aggressive emails. No, this time Karen struck in silence, and I only discovered her plan because of Buttercup's sudden strange behavior one morning. Buttercup didn't trot through the path like she usually did. She hesitated near Karen's side of the easement and sniffed the grass, pawing at it nervously. She was one of my calmer cows, always the first to walk and never one to complain, but now her eyes were wide and confused. She backed away, then turned and walked back toward the gate. At first, I thought maybe she just wasn't in the mood, but then Daisy did the same thing, and then Dolly, and suddenly the entire herd was standing still, noses high, ears flicking, like something wasn't right. I stepped onto the path, followed their line of sight, and nearly missed it. Scattered in the grass along the path, just inside Karen's property line, were little brown pellets. Not cow feed. Not grass. Something else entirely. I bent down and picked one up. Trail mix. Carefully sprinkled along the path in small piles. At first glance, it might have looked innocent. But I knew better. Trail mix on a livestock path was like candy at a dentist's office, out of place and suspicious. I bagged a few of the pellets and sent them to my buddy who worked at the local vet clinic. He called me the next day. His voice was tense. The mix had traces of diphenhydramine. Not enough to kill a full-grown cow, but enough to sedate one. Karen had tried to drug my herd. That changed everything. I didn't confront her directly, not yet. I set up another trail camera, this one hidden low in the weeds near the feeding spot. I wanted proof. And 2 nights later, I got it. The footage showed Karen sneaking into the path at midnight with a bag in her hand, sprinkling the contents as she walked. She wore all black, like she thought she was in a spy movie, but still managed to trip over her own flower pot on the way back. I took the video straight to the sheriff's office. The authorities didn't laugh. Not this time. This was animal cruelty. Attempted poisoning. Trespassing. And with the video, the vet's report, and a history of harassment, the case built itself. Within 3 days, Karen was served with a restraining order and a court summons. I didn't see her face the morning the deputy came to her door, but I heard about the scream from 3 houses down. Apparently she accused them of siding with the livestock mafia. She tried to tell the deputy that the cows had been harassing her and that she was defending her territory. That didn't go over well. The deputy reminded her that cows don't sneak around with trail mix in the middle of the night. The court date came faster than I expected. Karen's lawyer tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, suggesting she was feeding wildlife and didn't understand the risk. But the footage destroyed that defense. So did her own emails and HLA posts where she called the cows a disease-spreading nuisance. When the judge asked if she had any prior conflicts with me, she paused too long before saying no. My lawyer raised one eyebrow and rolled out a folder as thick as a phone book. Incident reports, emails, video clips, HLA complaints, everything dating back to the day she cut my fence. Karen paled. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of a quiet snort from Buttercup, who I'd brought in a printed cardboard cutout for moral support. The judge allowed it. In the end, Karen was charged with attempted animal endangerment, violation of property rights, and breach of the county livestock path easement. The court ordered her to pay a fine, complete animal cruelty prevention classes, and issue a written apology, not just to me, but to the entire HOA for dragging them through months of madness. Her backyard, once her pride and joy, was now subject to a county inspection every 6 months. The judge also upheld the right to keep the cow path operational for as long as I maintained the permit. Karen had officially lost the war. She didn't return home right away after the ruling. Someone said she stayed at her sister's place for a week, too embarrassed to show her face. When she finally returned, she was quieter. Not friendly, not repentant, just defeated. She kept her curtains closed. The dogs no longer barked. Her backyard remained untouched, as if she couldn't even stand to look at it anymore. The cow path continued, but the atmosphere was different. There was no more screaming, no more arguments, just a quiet shuffle of hooves and the occasional tail swat. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. That wasn't the point of any of this. All I'd ever wanted was for her to leave my land alone, to respect boundaries, both physical and personal. She could have walked her dogs anywhere else. She could have apologized. Instead, she doubled and tripled down, until the situation spiraled into something bigger than either of us expected. And now, with the court's ruling etched in stone, I finally felt something that had eluded me since the start of it all, peace. But just when I thought things had finally settled, the final twist arrived. It came in the form of a phone call from a local real estate agent. She asked if I'd be willing to speak to a potential buyer. Confused, I asked what for. She said Karen had listed her home. Apparently, she couldn't handle the notoriety anymore. The viral videos, the memes, the HOA disgrace, it had become too much. But that wasn't the real surprise. The surprise was who the buyer was. A goat farmer. From the next county over. He wanted a place with plenty of pasture access and tolerant neighbors. I laughed for a full minute before saying yes. I told the agent I'd even throw in some fencing tips, free of charge. It was poetic justice in its purest form. Karen, who tried to erase the rural charm from her backyard, might soon find it filled with even more livestock than before. Only this time with horns. I hung up the phone and walked outside to the path. Buttercup was napping under a shady patch of oak trees. Daisy and Dolly were lazily flicking flies from their ears. Everything was calm. The sun was warm. The air smelled like hay and dust and a little bit of triumph. For the first time in months, I let out a long, slow breath and smiled. Not because Karen had been punished, but because the land had won. The cows had won. And most of all, common sense had finally come out ahead. It had been 3 months since the court ruling, and life had finally settled into something that resembled normal. Or at least, what passed for normal when your cows had their own fan base and your property had become a kind of rural tourist attraction. The cow path remained open, clean, and operational. The sign still stood, weathered a little from the sun but proud and firm: "Authorized cow path, you do not obstruct." The trail had become a daily routine for the herd and an occasional amusement for neighbors and passers-by. People still slowed their cars to take photos, and kids waved from the sidewalks like it was a small-town parade. But things were quieter now. No more shouting, no more sabotage, no more bags of sedative-laced trail mix littering the grass. Just the soft rhythm of hooves and the satisfied grunts of cows enjoying their stroll. Karen was still there, technically. Her house hadn't sold yet. A "for sale" sign sat in her front yard, increasingly neglected and slightly crooked, like a symbol of her last-ditch effort to flee the chaos she started. She no longer made appearances, at least not in the way she used to. No yelling over fences, no arguments about HOA bylaws. Most days, her curtains stayed drawn and her dogs weren't heard. It was as if she was trying to disappear into her own house, hoping the world would forget the role she played. But the internet doesn't forget. Neither does a neighborhood that spent years under her thumb. The goats arrived a week later. The new buyer, a wiry man named Owen with suntanned arms and an easy laugh, brought a trailer full of them and parked it right in the middle of Karen's former driveway. I stood on my porch and watched as he unloaded 10 goats, each with their own unique personality and matching name tags. Apparently, Owen had a theme. Every goat was named after a famous general. He introduced me to Napoleon, Caesar, Hannibal, and the rest like they were royalty. The goats took to their new yard immediately. They climbed everything. They chewed everything. And within 20 minutes of arrival, one had perched itself on top of Karen's beloved lotus-shaped fire pit. Owen wasn't just a goat farmer. He was also a small-batch cheese maker and, as it turned out, a big fan of viral internet stories. He'd seen the footage, read the comments, and when he saw the listing for the house, he knew he had to make an offer. His plan was to turn the property into a live demonstration site for Goat Cheese Workshop. He said the location was perfect. He loved the idea of a suburban farm right on the edge of HOA territory. When I mentioned Karen, his smile widened and he told me, "I consider it sacred ground. A monument to standing your ground against nonsense." The day Karen moved out, she didn't say a word. She loaded her car with boxes in silence, her face hidden behind sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat. A moving truck followed behind, and the entire scene was watched quietly by a group of neighbors standing on their porches, coffee mugs in hand. No one said goodbye. No one waved. The only sound was the gentle bleating of Hannibal, who had wedged himself onto the roof of the moving truck and seemed completely uninterested in coming down. Karen never looked back. She just got into her car, pulled out of the driveway, and vanished down the road like a chapter that finally ended. The transformation of her property was almost immediate. Owen took down the old privacy screens, replaced the manicured lawn with a clover field, and added a small milking station near the back fence. He even put up a cheerful wooden sign at the corner of the property that read, "Welcome to Goat Heights, EST." After the fall, it didn't take long for locals to start showing up out of curiosity. Within 2 weeks, he had bookings for 3 workshops, a wait list for farm fresh cheese, and even a local bakery asking to stock his goat milk fudge. Where Karen saw nuisance, Owen saw opportunity. Where she tried to enforce control, he welcomed chaos and turned it into business. As for me, I kept my head down and my cows well fed. The notoriety faded a bit, replaced by a more sustainable rhythm. The online attention had calmed, though the occasional video still made the rounds. I received a message from a documentary filmmaker asking if I'd be interested in telling my story. I politely declined. I'd had my moment. I didn't need another. This land was mine long before Karen showed up, and it would still be mine long after the memes stopped circulating. I just wanted peace. And now I finally had it. I did, however, add one final touch. Near the gate where Karen first cut the fence, I installed a sturdy wooden archway. On it, I engraved the words Karen's Crossing, where entitlement meets hooves. It wasn't meant to mock. It was a marker, a reminder, a symbol of what can happen when someone underestimates the resolve of a farmer with the law on his side and cows on his team. Every time someone walked under that arch, they smiled. Every time a cow passed beneath it, they left behind one more story written in the soft footprints of justice. Owen and I struck up an easy friendship. We traded eggs and milk, laughed about the early days of the cow drama, and once even planned a joint open house for locals to see the animals and learn about sustainable farming. At that event, a boy asked me why I didn't just yell back at Karen when she started all this. I told him yelling doesn't fix fences or outsmart sabotage. But cows do. Patience does. The land does. He nodded like that made perfect sense and walked away with a goat sticker and a caramel made from goat milk. The seasons changed and the air cooled. Leaves turned gold and red, and the path stayed firm beneath the hooves. Life continued, one step at a time. The cows still walked their route, the goats climbed whatever they could, and the neighborhood found its balance again. Karen had tried to draw borders with scissors and attitude. I'd responded with law, livestock, and steady resolve. And in the end, it wasn't rage or revenge that won. It was the quiet strength of someone who knows what's theirs and refuses to be pushed off of it. So when I stood at the fence line one last time that year and watched the sunset over Karen's former backyard, now echoing with the happy chaos of goats and laughter, I didn't feel pride. I didn't feel bitterness. I just felt the land beneath my boots, the wind in my face, and the calm that comes from knowing I did what was right. The cows mooed softly behind me. Somewhere in the distance, Hannibal let out a bleat like a bugle call. And with that, I turned, closed the gate, and walked home, knowing that some victories don't need to be loud, they just need to be lasting.